Okay, so today I'm going to talk about this research project that I'm working with Dr. Liu, and she's also here for the question sessions. Our research topic is how does government support influence U.S. household debt repayment behavior under the COVID-19 pandemic. So let me introduce a little background for what actually motivated our research question. This graphic shows the mortgage delinquency rate in the past 16 years. We can see that by the end of the second quarter 2020, the delinquency rate climbed to the highest number in the past 9 years. And according to the report from March 2020 to April 2020, the delinquency rate increased by 90%, which is the highest single month increase on records. And this graphic shows the private student loan market looks like based on the loan status by the end of the first quarter. And we can see that comparing to the same time last year, the largest increase is in the forbearance part, and this is driven by the COVID-19 related relief activities. In general, based on those information, we can see that households were struggling about their payments for mortgage and student loans, but at the same time, the government released a series of relief packages to help with household payment pressure. So that kind of raises up our research question, how does U.S. households debt repayment behavior associated with governmental support? The data set you used in this study is Understanding America Study, Understanding Coronavirus in America survey, and this study used a national panel survey data starting from the second wave in April 2020 and until the 13th wave in September. And the 7th and 9th wave are not included because they're not in the longitudinal data file. So after all the control variables for the mortgage model, the sample size is 3,226, and the sample size for the student loan model is 1,743. So this graphic shows the reported late mortgage payment rate from our analysis sample. We can see that the trend is kind of matched the delinquency rate we just saw before. The late payment rate reached a peak around the mid of May, and it started to fall down during the following months. And this graphic shows the reported student loan late payment rate. And even though these are two different models and there are two different analysis sample groups, we cannot compare them directly. We can still see that the trend for the student loan late payment is different. The late payment rate started to climb, start April and stay relatively high in the next few months. And this graphic shows the reported late payment rate for those people who did not receive their lender permissions. So we can see that compared to student loan, the mortgage has a relatively low repayment rate. And we use this survey question to define our two dependent variables, the reported mortgage late payment and reported student loan payment. And we select 4 major governmental support which are applicable to the general group. We used the economic stimulus fund and the housing assistance only used under the mortgage model. And we use a temporary assistance for needy family. And last, we use a general aid for people or business affected by the coronavirus pandemic. We also control the variable listed here. And this is a model we estimated. So here is a result for the mortgage late payment model. So first we can see that for those people who receive the housing assistance, they're less likely to report a mortgage late payment, which is what we expected. But interestingly, we find that those people who receive the stimulus check are actually more likely to report a late payment for mortgage. And this is not what we expected. And we think through, there's 2 possible explanations we can argue for. The first is due to the data limitation, we cannot control consumers' savings or consumptions in this model. So there is a possibility that people who receive the check either just spend it or save it, but did not use it to pay down their debts. And another explanation is we argue that people use portion of the check to pay down the debt but they're doing mental accountings for their debt repayments. So there's a previous study focused on consumers' choice between pay down a debt and miss one. And their study find that consumers actually prefer to pay down the short-term debt first and then move to the collateral debt such as auto loan and a mortgage with a longer term. They argue that those short-term debt actually put higher pressure on consumers. By paying down those short-term debt, consumers will receive a higher level of relief when comparing to the longer-term mortgage, such as 30 years mortgage. So that's kind of can explain the result here. Yes, a household use their check to pay down the debt, but they maybe prefer to pay down the short-term debt, such as unsecured personal loan. And here we also find that those people who have emergency fund constraints are more likely to report a late payment, and those people, and compared to those people who are employed, those people who lost job are more likely to report a late payment for mortgage. And last, those people who receive the lender permission are more likely to report a late payment for mortgage. And this table shows the result for student loan late payment. So here we can see that those people who receive the stimulus check are less likely to report a late payment for student loan, and this is what we expected. And just even though we cannot compare this two models directly, we still can see that people actually behave differently depends on the type of debt. So here, the three highlight factors here are both significant in two models. So we argue these three factors are the most important factors related to household payment for mortgage and student loan. And here we can also see that as household income level increases, they're less likely to miss a student loan. So in conclusion, this research is still in the preliminary stage. So we find something, we also raise up some questions. Yes, receiving government support does have a positive effect on household student loan repayments, and household use a portion of the stimulus check to pay down debt, but maybe not all types of debt. And we argue that at least some households behave strategically for their repayments to different types of debt. That's all the presentation today, and thank you guys.